I will got it. Is that I will, because we're gonna try to do two. So my idea is that I will like host this first one
Okay.
and that you will host the second one.
That sounds great.
Okay, good. Okay.
Mhm.
We'll just begin then.
Let's begin.
So I would like to talk with you, Sascha, about the feeling of being stuck.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, that's what we're exploring this month. And it feels like there's so many ways to be stuck for me. I feel like it's remarkable how many things I can be stuck in. And it's also really remarkable how many of the things that I can be stuck in upon examination are me, like
Right.
tangled in myself,
Yeah. Right.
desperately fighting my way out.
Yes. And blaming everything else. We're
Yeah.
like, that's the problem. Yes. Well, at least that's my experience. Yes. Continue.
So I thought that maybe we could start this episode by talking about examples of being stuck inside things that are not, that are definitively, well, that are not ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, and partly I wanted to start that way because I have found in my life that having a physical experience, like a physical metaphor, is really helpful for me when I'm trying to sort out um like emotional, psychological tangles.
Mhm.
Um just to be able to
Mm.
touch back into something more
Mhm.
concrete
More
and
tangible. Yeah.
yeah, like something in my body, like, oh, this is like that in this way, this is like that in
Mhm.
this way. um so if you're amenable, I
Yeah.
would love to start. I thought that maybe we could set it up like this. I thought that maybe we could each tell our story of physical stuckness.
Mhm.
Like I'll tell my story of physical stuckness and like then we can have a little period after I tell my story where we can talk about it a little bit,
Sure.
and then you'll tell your story of physical stuckness. And then we'll each tell our story of emotional, then we'll each talk about something that we're experiencing right now, like an ongoing emotional, like piece of emotional
Mhm.
like I don't know,
Mhm.
like gummy entanglement.
Yeah.
um and then see if we can pull, if there's anything we can pull out of the physical examples that can help with the, that could help
Mhm.
us sort of, I don't know, like make space inside of the emotional and the emotional knots.
Sure.
The like sticky it to me, I'm like imagining like all kinds of necklaces, but then also like if you have a pocket full of necklaces, but then also like a lollipop,
I
and then it
that sounds
rains.
awful.
Then it gets cold, and then you're like, oh
Uh,
no, how do I get
yeah.
out of this?
Yeah. I don't know. We
Oh
might just need
no,
to just abandon the
throw it all
plan. Yeah,
away.
throw it all away. Okay. I like this and I like the metaphor. That's helpful to me too. And I want to hear your story. So, would you like to begin?
Yes, okay, I will begin.
Great.
Okay, so the story of physical stuckness that I have chosen is from when I was little. When I was in first grade, and we had moved into this new apartment, and we were living on the second floor of the apartment, and it was like a single family house, and these two old women owned and lived in it. They lived on the first floor. It wasn't a, yeah. And my mom was sort of getting reduced rent for helping out, around the house. And so on this particular day, my mother was out in the yard, like mowing the lawn with a loud lawnmower. And I was getting changed. And I used to, and actually still to some extent do, I have learned this lesson, but my instinct to take my shirt off was to grab the hem, like the bottom of my shirt, and then pull it up over my arms, so my arms would, do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And like wrestle it off of my head. So at one point my elbows would just be like, the shirt would be over my elbows and my elbows would be, and my mother so many times was like, cross your arm, like that's not how you take off a shirt. Like you're stretching your shirts out, like that's like you're doing it wrong.
You're like,
And I
"I
would
need
get
bigger
stuck in them.
shirts." That's all. Bigger shirts clearly is the answer.
Sometimes the shirts were big enough and it was no problem, like a
Right.
lot of the time, or stretchy
Uh-huh.
enough. And sometimes they weren't. And then I would get stuck and then she would get me out.
Mhm.
And then she would be like, don't do
Again. Yes.
that. But I couldn't, and this is a thing that I only realized later, like conceptually, it didn't make sense to me to reach for my shirt from outside it. Like in my mind, I was like, I am inside the shirt. I have to be inside it. My arms also have to be inside it before I can get out of it. Like I can't, how can I get it off of me if I reach down with my arms outside it to pull it off of me? Then I had like,
It's like, I know what you're saying, but it just doesn't work for I can't get over the fact that I need to be inside all the way to then be outside all the way. I can't be like, let's just have this be an arm shirt that I'm wearing. No, we're not going through that phase. So no, I get it. I have things like that too, where I get like, I know they're probably right, but my body is like, nope, we're still doing it this way. That's not the best way. I think I
my
actually take my shirts off like this now that we're talking about it. I'm like, is this why I always wear big roomy shirts? Like, I think I have to. Like, even with this tank, I'm like, how do I take it off? I think I don't do that with this. But like, anyway, proceed. I'm doing
I
some
know, because
reflection over here on like, if I just never had anyone tell me, don't do that. But anyway, carry on.
well, and the thing is, it's like if you don't, it's a really hard thing to get out of your head into words. Like it was a real, and it persists on some level of being like a real thing inside my brain. But like, how do you communicate? Like I couldn't explain the problem to my mother because I was like,
Yeah,
you know,
we're 7, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah. And I couldn't understand, like, I couldn't understand it. Like, but there's no, that's impossible because your arms are outside then. It's like, do you detach that? Like, I just like, yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so I was just like hoping for the best, making do. It was going okay, like it had worked out thus far. On this day, I was taking this shirt off, and it was a tight enough shirt that I got stuck, and my mother was out mowing the lawn. So then there I was upstairs in this house, stuck inside my shirt, and the shirt was like over my head, and my elbows were stuck inside it, and I
Mm.
was trapped. Like I couldn't see, I couldn't get out. I couldn't get down the stairs because I couldn't see. I was screaming for her,
You
like
were.
screaming for her, but
Oh.
she couldn't hear me. She wouldn't have been able to hear me anyway, but she definitely couldn't hear me because she was mowing the lawn.
No.
It was terrible. It
How
was like
long? Okay, keep going.
terrible.
I want to. Okay.
Oh my God. And I was panicked, and I felt panicked and abandoned. I was like, my mother, like, I remember being like, she has abandoned me. Like, she has abandoned me. I am alone. I am unsafe. I am alone. I was angry. I went through all the feelings, like struggling in my shirt. I was like crying. Like first I
Oh.
was screaming. I was like throwing myself against the wall, trying to make enough noise, crying. Finally, I just collapsed in like a heap of just like, like distress on my bed, just like weeping. Like I was
Mm.
just like stuck in my shirt, weeping on my bed. And then when that was over, I got out of my shirt. And like
How?
I don't remember the moment. I don't remember how I got out of my shirt, but I remember that like I cried until I was done crying. My mother never came. I was like, I'll cry and then she'll come and she'll see me here crying and she'll feel so bad. that she's such a terrible mother that she's
Right.
like
Here's
left
my
me
poor daughter
alone.
crying, stuck in her shirt,
Yeah.
all because I was mowing the lawn. Mm.
But she didn't. She didn't come in. She didn't find me. I cried until I was done crying, and then there was nothing left to do. And then somehow I took my shirt off. And I remember feeling
Wow.
like,
And then you were free of it.
and then I was free of it. And
Mm.
it was, and I didn't tell her because I felt so, it felt so good to be like confident, like I was like, yeah, I can
Yeah.
take my shirts off. Like I took my shirt off. I did it. But
Wow.
I felt enormously like both, I felt really triumphant, like so
Mm.
triumphant that this is my story. Like it's, you know
Right.
what I mean?
Like it's still a big deal, right?
Like
We're
it's still a
still
big deal.
excited about this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and I think that's my story of
Mm.
of being physically stuck.
Mm. Okay. I like it.
I
And
don't
I think, the thing that strikes me, and as I'm thinking about, because I have like three contenders for this piece that I'm like, what do I tell? But yours is so perfect and clear and simple in this way of like literally physically as a child being stuck in a shirt.
Mhm.
Um, I don't have any that's quite that, I think, crisp, but what resonates with me, and I'm curious to see if this tracks with the next stories, is sometimes at some point you get out, and that just is the story. Like that's how it ends. It's not. It's like there's so much thought, there's so much feeling. You remember it so clearly, the stuck feeling, but then you almost can't remember how you get
That's
out.
it.
But then it's just done, and then you're like, oh, we're done.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't remember I don't remember getting out.
and and it's like, okay, the way memory maps is interesting in the stories you tell yourself. Anyway, we can circle back if that seems relevant. Oh, so my physical stories, um I have two stories. I think I will start with this one, that I will tell the one that is relevant like this week.
Okay.
That's kind of physical and kind of
Oh,
not. So but it feels really relevant, and I want to tell a different story later. So I'm going to start here. So so I have epilepsy, and I take medication to control my seizures. And I recently moved, and there were all these issues with getting my prescription transferred. And also we moved, and then I had COVID. And so we've had other things on our mind. This is always pretty front of my mind though. So, like a week ago, before I was going to run out, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and get this transferred now. And I'm not going to go into the details because the details are incredibly boring.
mhm.
But suffice it to say that I spent probably in the end about 3 hours total on hold or talking to pharmacists at 4 different pharmacies. And it just wasn't happening. And I felt powerless. I was like, I can't be the pharmacist. Like, I'm the pharmacist, please transfer it over. Like, I could get a hold of people, but they couldn't get a hold of each other or claimed they couldn't. And it's like, I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
I can't do the thing. I'm at the mercy of this other stuff happening, and I've done my part, and I'm waiting. And meanwhile, I'm like, so just letting everyone know that it probably doesn't matter to you all so much, but if I don't have my meds come Saturday, I'm probably going to have a seizure, and it's definitely going to affect my weekend because I'm going to just lay in bed all weekend.
Yeah.
Which in some ways it's like, that sounds great, but not actually if you're like just waiting so you don't have a head injury,
Right.
you know?
Right. You just lay in
So
bed waiting to have the seizure.
waiting, and then
Yeah.
So I felt really like, okay, this is my future. Like I have very little control. I was able to finally, we gave up on the old pharmacy, and which was like a big box chain retailer place that
Uh-huh.
now I'm at an independent place that I feel a lot better about. Um, and the pharmacist said, "Hey, why don't you just like, let's just let go of this
Uh-huh.
and contact your doctor, even if that feels even harder, because sometimes it's like, oh, it takes 3 to 4 days to get a da da da,
Uh-huh.
but like this isn't working. Let's
Yeah.
just try this over here." And I was like, okay. So I did, and they were able to expedite and get it. And I picked up my prescription this morning.
Oh,
It was
good.
just like literally this morning that it's resolved. I had been out of pills completely, which was like not something I've done in many, 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 many years, like since college. And that did not feel great, but it
No.
felt like, I think when I feel worried, I was like holding on tighter and tighter and tighter. And I'm like, what I need to do is just hold on even tighter. And it makes me think of you with the shirt. It's like, I can't let this go. Like, I can't.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, like you might die in the shirt, or I might like not get the meds. So what I'm going to do is just hyper fixate on Walgreens and then call back and listen to the terrible music every day. And it's like, what? Like, I just couldn't. I was like stuck in my trap. And
Yeah.
I think interestingly, the thing that is like, there was a relaxing of like, like I had just ruled that option out. I was like, I can't call my doctor. I already have a refill and it's going to take too long.
Yeah.
And then I needed to just take a breath and like pivot
Yeah.
and then pew.
And then it
And
just
now
worked.
the story is like, I told my husband, I was like, will you help me remember to pick it up today? Because honestly, once I heard it was in, the relief washed over me so much that I was like, story's over. And I'm like, yeah, but I still actually need them. I'm like, it's resolved.
That's
And I'm like, but like at the feeling, like the dog with the bone feeling,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I couldn't let go, couldn't let go, couldn't let go. And then something shifted and I was like, thank God. All right, moving on.
Really interesting.
Yeah. So it's kind of physical, kind of not, but
Mm.
it was about my body, like
It's
doing something
tangible,
that I
it's concrete.
couldn't. Yeah, it
Yep.
was like
Mhm.
it's a very clear, like, this is going to impact my,
Yeah.
it's going to
Mhm.
be not great. So,
That's really good. So now I'm wondering how part of me feels like I would like to talk about both of those examples because there's some really interesting things, but I think the first thing I'd like to do is, so okay, so I'm gonna just segue right into so the emotional thing that I
mhm.
thought I would that I'd like us to, um that I'd like us to fix today.
Let's fix it. And I will be like a dog with a bone and I won't let go and it'll be really uncomfortable. And that's the best way to fix
What
anything.
I've learned so far from both of our examples is one should struggle
Yes. And
and then struggle
hyperfixate
more.
and not let it go.
Throw yourself against the
Great.
walls. Keep
Cry.
calling
Yes.
Walgreens.
Yes.
Just
Just
whatever it
don't
is, do
stop.
it again and again.
And yeah.
Um, yeah.
Mhm.
Wait, let's see if we can get beyond
Let's
that.
beyond. Woo.
That
All
doesn't
right.
seem.
No.
Um, so the emotional thing that I was interested in applying this to is this thing that I do over and over and over and over and over again, where I like I identify things in my world that I like right now there's like I identify things in my world that love that I want to that I want. So like um and it could be anything. And then I try to like right now my neighbors have a dog and they're getting divorced and there's this all this question about what's going to happen with the dog and I've been walking her forever. And I can see these pathways. I can see these pathways to a really lovely, sustainable, balanced place where we're all quite happy. Um, and I want to go down the pathways, but then when I start on the pathway, suddenly there's like the bright trouble of everybody's complicated feelings, like everybody's complicated feelings. And I will often end up in an effort to like navigate through them, making things so much worse,
Mm.
like I get very tangled up in them. And this is a thing that I've done in so many contexts, in so many contexts. And I can feel it now when I'm doing it, but I still can't. I often feel it and can't really.
Mhm.
I'm like, I can't see, like, I'm like, no, I do have to have my arms inside the shirt. I'm like,
Right.
like I can't.
Mm.
I'm like, I
I
don't
don't.
see the other solution. I don't see.
Right.
I understand that this is the bad thing, but I don't see the other solution. So
Mm.
that's my emotional thing that I'd like to apply some of these physical metaphors to.
Hmm.
What's yours? What's your
Well, so mine is okay. Mine is a little. I'm going to talk about an example with one of my kids. Um, kind of the just the parenting side of it. We have recently gone through this as well, where my oldest said he was resistant to going on a big family trip that's been planned for years because of the pandemic. It was delayed, and I saw this coming, that he would resist or not be excited because it's a lot for him. Um, so in a way, it's like I saw it coming, and as soon as I heard his resistance, I was like, I knew it. My head is like, I knew it. I saw it coming. I can predict the future. Like, I'm like, what prize do I win? Great. Like, I know him. Like, okay,
Mhm,
fantastic. But I immediately felt just this quick vacillation between anger and like sadness about it. Like, just like, oh, I'm just um and we that was where I usually, like, I have a hard time getting disentangled from like where my feelings are about it. Like, I'm going to be disappointing people. I'm going to be embarrassed. It's going to be hard. It's going to be costly. I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be resentful. I'm going to be like, I feel it coming. I'm like, here
mhm,
comes the cloud.
mhm,
Like, how do I avoid all of that? And I get then fixated, kind of like with Walgreens, like
mhm,
Walgreens. I'm just going to. I see one path forward in my moment of panic, and
mhm.
I'm like, that's the way.
That's so interesting.
And then I'm like, I'm gonna go that way, and then I put blinders on, and then I'm like dogged about that path to get me to around this like mushroom cloud of awful
Yeah,
feelings that are actually unavoidable.
yeah, they're
Ugh.
unavoidable.
So
Okay,
this is
so
what I like to. We can talk more about that as it
mhm.
relates to both of us and our different stuck tendencies.
I feel like that's really interesting because, right, your thing was Walgreens. So you're like, I have decided on this path and and there's a limited amount of time. So
I'm just sticking
divert,
with it. I'm down
yeah.
this path, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, come on.
Hmm. My thing is like, I will fling around, I will scream and cry. I will try all the paths. I will try all the paths until I am a sweaty, like, it's like wet, devastated creature because I will try all the paths.
Right.
And I think that's so interesting that we have, but then in both cases, it seems like, well, in my case, it feels like there's like a moment of collapse
Hmm.
where I'm like, all of the paths have failed, and now I am still trapped.
Yeah.
Is that true in your case too, in
Yeah.
your metaphor? Yeah.
Yeah. I think uh what and this emotional tangle that I was in and have been in, we actually were able to do something different this time, which was interesting. But what it for me, it was more of a letting go of like, I think for me, and I don't know about for you, but you talked about like you see, like I think you used I think you said something about, you see what's coming, and it's like the emotional
Uh-huh.
things of other people, or like, all of a sudden it becomes more complicated. You're like, I think for me, when I get into these situations where it feels like high stakes, like I really want a particular outcome, and I'm like, yeah, but I see it just over there. I just need to get right by you. So just can you just move out of the way and I'll get
Yeah.
to the good outcome.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh,
Mm.
I it's about predicting the future that I cannot actually do. And I keep having to remind myself of this. I do not actually think I have a gift for predicting the future. I
Uh,
think I have just the kind of the typical human desire to think I can. Or if I plan well enough and if I control my environment well enough, then the future is mine.
uh-huh.
And it's not, even with the best plans. And that's so easy to say. I mean, it's so easy to say. It's easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, I'm letting it all go. But then when it's something you really care about,
Mhm.
and I have decided on my path, and I'm getting in that fixed mindset of like, I've committed to the path. Like,
Mhm.
I think that I think our approaches are different, but they're similar in that I don't know. I feel like there's a part of yours, and you tell me what you think, that is about like, what you're kind of shooting for, and you're trying different things, but each one it's like, that's a little uncomfortable. Let's try this way. Also uncomfortable and not working out. It's like,
Yeah.
why? Where's the path where there's not friction and I don't hit a wall?
Okay.
I don't know.
So
What do
I
you
feel
think?
like
Okay, tell me what you
the
think.
physical, like the picture I get in my mind is like, your way is like the shirt, like your way is like the tube. It's like there's a tube and I'm in the tube.
Right.
And like I'm like, I recognize that this tube is made up of many strands, but I can't acknowledge the many strands because I just need to push my way through the tube. Like it's
Yeah.
just the picture in my head is like a densely packed, solid
Mm-hmm.
tube. It's kind of like brownish red.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh.
Mm-hmm.
And mine is like, I'm like the tube. I'm going to go through the tube and I get into the tube. And then I'm like, oh my God, this tube is made up of many strands. Which is the strand? Is it this strand? Is it this strand? And like, before I know it, so it's like we're in the same tube, but we're perceiving it differently, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah. So you're
yeah.
like
Then the
working the
question
strands.
is
Do
the
you feel like you
tube
get more
real?
tangled on
I feel
in the
like
strands?
I feel like I make up the strands. Like I feel like I'm like, or the more I talk to them about who they are, the more I'm like, oh, are you up? Like, are you the strand? Are you upset? What do I need to do for you? Like, the more I like push energy into each of the strands and each of them lights up, but then it turns out
Mm-hmm.
none of them it's like, I don't know, it's like jellyfish tentacles. It's
Right.
they're not attached. Like, I can't figure out who they're attached to or how to like unravel them. And I think that I think that part of the problem for me is that in that moment, the solution isn't to figure out which strand to follow or how to not be tangled in the strands. The solution is to not be in the tube at all, like to be in and
Mm-hmm.
out of the tube, to not be
Mm-hmm.
entirely in the tube. Or to,
Mm.
and this is where I'm just gonna speak in words that mean something to me, but may not mean anything outside of my body.
Just gonna be in the tube, like things like that. Go for it. Go for it.
But you know what I mean? Like it feels like, and in your case too, it feels like there's this thing that happens where you're in the where I'm in the tangle where you're, and then the tangle, like from a different perspective, the tangle doesn't necessarily exist. Like for you, it's like, okay, you're in this tangle, but then if you, and you really are, but then if you look at it from this other way, it's like, okay, you could talk to your doctor. You could, like, maybe
Mm-hmm.
you could drive to like a, I don't know, can you drive to like a walk-in clinic and be
Mm-hmm.
like, hi,
Right.
I'm going to have a seizure. Like,
Right. Exactly.
like, I don't know what the,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, there's a way that it is, it's like I've had this therapist for a while whom I loved, and I would come to him with my like horrible feelings, and I would like tell them to him, and he would like be like, "Oh, okay." And I always felt like I was handing him like a thing, like a heavy,
Mm-hmm.
dense thing, and he would take it in his hands, and like I could see he would like take it, and as soon as he took it, I could see that it wasn't real. Like I
Mm.
was like, "Oh, it vanishes when you hold it." And then
Mm.
he would hand it back to me and then it would be solid,
Mm.
but like for a second it wouldn't be. Like there's
Mm.
something about
Mm-hmm. Did that help you feel less stuck when you would talk to him? Like in whatever tangle?
it
Or did
did.
it was it just while you were talking to him? Like, let's just talk always. That's my new tangle. We must never part. That's fine, right?
So by therapist, do you actually mean like
Yes.
full-time life companion?
Yeah.
It's like
Then if so,
shadow.
we're great. This feels healthy.
It feels healthy. I feel like I'll be fine so long as you are always by my side.
Uh,
Um,
yeah.
I don't know. I
Okay. Yeah. I so I will tell you, share a little bit about the emotional tangle that I was in and what I did differently this time that felt like you talked about at some point, maybe with regard to your shirt, like spaciousness, like creating like I think what happens is I start feeling like there's no way, like the only way out of this uncomfortable feeling is the direction either I have stubbornly decided is the way, or I just can't see another way, or I'm just so uncomfortable that I'm like flailing like you were in the shirt. Like any way out is fine. I don't even care now which way, just like not this. Um, and I've been in that situation too with some things, but I do tend to be like, I see one idea and now I'm committed. Oh, all of my angst
mhm.
at this way. And what happened with this particular situation with my son was we first of all I took time. So I inserted spaciousness by saying I need to think about this and we need to talk about it. So that was helpful. Thing number one. Number two, we realized putting aside what we want and all the reasons we may want it or not, what are we comfortable with? And we had two options. And so we went back and said, here are the two options in a very non emotional way. And we could felt like we could do either. And I just put all the emotional stuff. It's like I just saw it all the potential embarrassment, resentment, sadness, anger. And I was like, here, just sit here. We don't know if we need you. But right now I know that one A or B could work. And I really felt like, oh my God, this is so much better. And then we let him choose. And we just didn't talk about it until it was the time to choose. And then he chose, and he chose actually to come. So all those feelings just weren't even needed. And it was like, what magic is this? Oh my God, what magic is this? Um,
Yeah, what
and
magic is that?
right? I think it was like, I think the feeling, like I start a preview of feelings to come. It's like a trailer for a horror movie. Like this is what's coming if you go down this path. And so I'm like, well, no, I'm not going down that path. And then I'm arguing about the path. And meanwhile, it could be that there you walk down the path and there's this fork in the road that you didn't know because you were so upset about the road. And then So yeah.
Yes,
So,
that's right. That feels right.
right?
It's like when I was stuck in my shirt, I didn't really need to be spending so much time worrying about my mother abandoning me, right?
When you say it now, at whatever age we are, which I keep forgetting if I'm 46 or 47, but it's it just does sound like, yeah, that probably wasn't about your mom abandoning you. But like I know as like a 6, 7 year old, you're like, clearly this is what's happened. And it's adding to the panic. Thank you.
But I think that's it feels right though.
Mm-hmm.
Like I spend a lot of time devoting a lot of energy to what happens,
Right.
like if I'm stuck in my shirt for literally ever. And then my mother comes in from mowing the lawn and I'm dead in my shirt. And like it's because she doesn't didn't care enough to help me out of
There's
my
a
shirt.
there's a lot of stories that you told yourself that made that like it's interesting the things we tell ourselves and then how we are. And one of the stories I tell myself is this is how it's going to feel forever.
Yeah.
Like you will never not feel this way.
Yeah.
And I know it's kind of like you should cross your arms to take off your shirt. It's kind of like the thing I know. Like, yes, I know things will change, but really, I don't know it.
Yeah.
But really, in my little heart, I
Yeah.
think it's happening forever.
Forever.
Like when I'm gloomy and it's raining, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sad now, always. And I'm, even if I now know, I'm like, of course, I am affected by the weather.
Yeah.
And like now I have gotten to where I'm like less panicked about it.
Yeah.
It's like my body's like, you need to pay attention to this. Do you see that you're sad? And I'm like, I don't need to panic every time it's gray and gloomy. I just
Right.
need to say like, maybe this is a different kind of day. And like my former therapist was big on like helping me think about like how I talk about it, even like not saying gloomy, like say
Yeah.
cozy.
Uh-huh.
But my brain is like gloomy, 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 you know? And so I have to like, anyway,
Right.
it's
Like,
not forever. It feels like panic sets in
uh-huh.
before even the bad thing really started. The bad
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah. Right. Like if I had in that scenario, it could have been I was it could have been just like I got stuck in my shirt and I'm gonna have to sit in my room for like
Right.
quietly for a little bit. And then my
Right.
mom will get me out or I'll figure out how to like the things that were required, the panic that was required was much, much less than the panic. Like the pain that was required. Like, yes, that's too bad because sitting inside your shirt isn't very fun,
Yeah.
but it's not deadly. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think that that is what I have with all the things, with like Maddie, I'm like the neighbor's dog. I'm like, I'm going to try to crate train her so that she can come here during the day. But what if it doesn't work? And what if Jan doesn't like the crate? And what if she gets upset? And then what if she is so upset that, like
And you
our
are far
family
down the
falls
road
apart and,
at this point. Right. Yes.
like, and then we have to just bring Maddie out to the woods to be murdered by a herd of buffalo, like I'm like having feelings for things that, like just
Yeah.
sit quietly in your shirt.
Yeah. You're in a stuck spot. It's
Hmm.
kind of like the gray day. It's like, yeah, this is a stuck moment. Like this is well, it's like we were talking about like having travel anxiety and like saying, before a trip, I always feel a
Yeah.
little like pulled and distracted
Yeah.
or like worried about like logistics and like just saying, oh yeah, I don't need to
Yeah.
then panic about it. And I think it's like
Right.
that panic pre like front loading all the let me go ahead and feel all the things about this. And it's like, why though? How
Yeah.
about not doing that.
Yeah, the
Like, and that
spaciousness.
the spaciousness, and I think time, like with my kid, that helped a lot. And because it allowed me to, instead of like react in that panic first moment, it allowed me to like be like, yeah, this is an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah,
Yes, I would choose to not have this even be happening, but it is.
yeah,
So it allowed me to like find more spaciousness throughout it. And I think it felt good to my kid too. And
yeah.
so I'm like,
That's a
how do
good
I,
point too,
yeah.
because my panic makes other people feel panicked.
Mm-hmm.
Like it tries to make other people feel panicked,
Yeah.
and it does.
Right. And then there's panic about, oh no, I'm making other people. And then it just is like a huge mess of a snowball of good intentions where
Uh-huh.
you're like, but I meant well, but
Uh-huh.
does that matter anymore? Right.
And it's hard because it's like a chemical thing that happens, like
Mm.
I think that it is, like when the dog barks, like I can feel my chemistry, like I can feel my body, my brain is like, an animal you love is upset. Like
Mhm.
chemicals flood my body, or like when I'm
Yeah.
trapped in my shirt, chemicals flood my body. And I think that to the spaciousness to like, I might just need to lay on the bed crying and then not cry. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
like what if you're not trying to solve the what if for a minute to solve the problem you have to stop. You have to just let the chemicals.
Yeah. You just have to feel it without
Yeah.
action or fighting or getting out of the shirt.
Yeah. And that seems really hard.
It's surprisingly hard.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly hard. And I've been thinking a lot about this as we've had such horrific news
Yeah.
and thinking about the state of the world and um, my impulse is like, what can we do?
Yeah.
What can we do? What can I do right now? What can
Yeah.
I do right now? I don't
Yeah.
care if it's hard or costly. Like, let's do the thing now. And there, I, I am for action. If and when things there's action that I haven't done before, that's
Mm-hmm.
not just feels like a checking it off. Like I did a thing, I should feel good now and put it to bed. But even if I do things, there's the feeling that
Mm-hmm.
I think my system is like, maybe I can just scoot around the feeling,
Yeah.
jump to doing something, and then distract myself with happy things. But you know what? It's just not. It's just not.
No.
It's some things just hurt,
Yeah.
and they need to like.
Yeah.
And this is what we're trying to do also, is to create space for that,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
feels very important in this moment
Feels
in our
very
world.
important in this moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes things hurt and I can surrender to the fact that they hurt, and that creates space that allows some of the trouble to dissipate. Sometimes that's part of sometimes that's the end result,
Hmm.
like or that's a result is
Yeah.
that I can be like, oh, it's happened
Yeah.
and I'm in it and I can't and I'm just surrendered to that, and then that creates room for me to move into the next phase.
Hmm.
And that's wonderful. And
It is
sometimes it doesn't.
wonderful. And you don't know. And then
Mhm.
also that surrendering, it's almost like it's less of a linear planned next phase,
Yeah.
which is uncomfortable and
Right.
not in keeping with how we typically function
Exactly.
as Americans.
That's so good and important.
Yeah,
Like,
but it's
'cause
more of
yeah.
like a sinking in and organic. You don't really know what's coming
Yeah.
next. Um, and we are just collectively ignoring, numbing,
Yeah.
shoving away the the hard stuff, or just channeling it into quick action, which I'm not saying is bad, but I do feel like we also have to feel, and or it's just in the mail for future generations. Like we just are um
Yeah.
collectively not processing. And
And
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. And
Mm,
like the feeling of being like, I'm gonna feel and then I'm gonna drop into some other space and then maybe there'll be a way that I move in that space, but I don't know that it'll be it'll look like anything. I don't know that it'll
mm,
like maybe it'll look like the thing you're hoping for, like Luca goes on the trip, you
yeah,
know?
right,
Or maybe it will not look like maybe it will look like something very different than that.
right.
And um how to be comfortable with how it's hard to figure out how to be or it's helpful. It's useful to me to have comrades, to have companions in this like project of trying to figure out how to get more comfortable with
Yeah,
that, you know,
yeah.
in tiny stupid ways that don't seem
Yeah.
like they matter so that I could be comfortable with it in big ways that do matter,
Mm,
I think.
I know. And that's why the shirt example is good. Like it's helpful to remember like the boundaries of it, like the lines of it where you end and where like so when you are wrestling with something really big,
Yeah.
you know, you have a better sense of where you are and
Yeah.
like what you tend to do and how when you make it worse
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
you're flooded with chemicals and
Mhm.
like panicked about that now, not exactly the shirt. Like now
Yeah.
you're fighting chemicals. Now
Yeah.
you're just in an internal battle and the
Yeah.
shirt is just witnessing this and like what happened. Like I'm just a shirt. And these
Yeah.
things, yeah. And um I think there's a lot to inserting time and space and just
Mhm.
spaciousness in
Yeah.
general into and that allows for time to feel things, which is uncomfortable even for someone like me who talks about this all the time.
Yeah.
Like so I can imagine if it's new or
Yeah.
if you've your whole life been like taught to ignore and not encouraged or not taught that that was important, it would be very hard to like I'm gonna feel my way through this. What
Mhm.
even is that? What even
Mhm.
does that mean? Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, mm, yeah,
Yeah. I like it. I think that this is a helpful practice
yeah. Me too.
that I'd like to do. Like I like the idea of finding the little small
Mhm.
things um and like and noticing how they work and then linking them up like, "Oh, I don't have no it's not true that I have no experience with this. It's not true that I've never
Mhm.
encountered this before."
It's just on a different scale.
On a different
And
scale, and a different,
mhm.
like, context, but
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to, um,
Mm.
sort of like for me, it feels like it's like a little bit, like I wanna accumulate all my practice, you know? And I
Mm.
wanna, like, count all the things, and,
Yeah,
so that I can feel like, "Yes, yes,
I know.
I can."
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
Ah,
Okay, well, this has been good and helpful.
I agree.
This has
I'm
been good and helpful.
accumulating and building my practice with you.
Me too. I like
Yeah.
it a lot.
Right.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sasha. Thank you so much.